Hello, and welcome to another episode of Sensational She-Geek live from Yancey Street. Today is Friday, April 2nd, 2021, and this is episode 11B. As it is a Friday B episode, we will be discussing the comic book picks, my comic book picks of this week, things that I loved and found notable from my comic book poll list, things that I read this week. Of those, I'm going to be talking about, and thank goodness it is all good stuff this week. I don't have any nitpicky moments this time around. We have Silk number 1, Batman Catwoman number 4, Black Cat number 4, Beta Ray Bill number 1, lots of B's here, X-Men number 19, Decorum number 7, and Strange Adventures number 9. After that, we will not be discussing Superman and Lois. Well, we will be in not an episode. We'll be just talking about the show because I will not be discussing a new episode, and we will be discussing why that is. There is no new episode and why that is. After that, we're going to jump straight into other bits of industry news and rumors and things like that, starting with Thor Love and Thunder casting news, as well as the Flash casting news, the TV show, and some potential Eternals news, not casting, it's more of just rumors of who is going to appear in that. After that, we have some unfortunate DC Extended Universe lineup updates, and then a couple of thoughts on reactions to the Bad Batch trailer, and the second Suicide Squad trailer, which dropped yesterday, if you missed that. And then I'm going to wrap it all up with just a funny note on a funny note on Rihanna, of all people. She popped up kind of in the industry recently. We'll talk about why that is. And also just some notes on my website and the podcast and how I'm going to try and connect those going forward. So even though we're not talking about a full episode of Superman and Lois, I am confident that there is going to be plenty of things to discuss here. It is, like always, a fantastic time to be a nerd, and these things are always coming out for whether it's the MCU, the DCEU, or various other projects like Snowpiercer, which I did watch. It finished, wrapped up this week. It was based on a comic, a French graphic novel, I should say, which is very strange, but the show is excellent, in my opinion. There's also, Resident Alien, which is based off a comic. I'm sorry, I think the show's better than the comic. But that's, I have my biases to some of the actors in that, I guess. So there's always nerdy news and stuff in the culture, I guess you could say the geek culture happening. So I will always have that to talk about to fill in time with this. And there is a lot today. So we'll go ahead and get started without further ado with the comic book picks of the week. Once again, those are going to be Silk number 1, Batman Catwoman number 4, Black Cat number 4, Beta Ray Bill number 1, X-Men number 19, Decorum number 7, and Strange Adventures number 9. Interestingly, we have 2 Johnathon Hickman titles. Well, I mean, if you know me, it's not interesting, it's predictable. And 2 Tom King titles. They are 2 of my favorite comic writers, so that's not very surprising. And the others are really just as good. They are also fantastic and excellent. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Silk number 1 was a phenomenal read. I was so pleased to walk away so satisfied from it. This is, of course, Silk Volume 3, number 1. This is the 3rd series that Cindy Moon has gotten to herself. And holy moly, they write a good Cindy Moon. This is, of course, written by Maureen Gu with art done by Takeshi Miyazawa. While Maureen Gu is doing the writing, you have to give just as much credit to Miyazawa because their art is something between what you might find in a manga and a comic books traditionally. I'm not sure if it's quite cartoony. It's not quite right to how to describe it, but it's an excellent fit for Cindy and her life and her world. Everything is just so perfect about this. I did mention it in America number 1, but man, it is so good to be able to finally, or I guess I should say just to be able to fully enjoy a first issue of a new female superhero series. I feel like so often I find myself supporting them for the character, not necessarily the content, because the issues lack something or other. This is just like America. It doesn't force me into that corner. I loved it, unabashedly, truthfully, really loved it. Gu writes Cindy beautifully. She captures the similarities between her and Peter Parker, as well as the differences. Of course, Cindy Moon was bit by the same spider as Peter Parker, spent 10 years in a bunker by herself, and now has finally been, she's out, and she is a reporter for J. Jonah Jameson once again, and trying to balance her life the same way that Peter does. So she's able to read, it's funny that she's able to read J. Jonah Jameson the way that she is, and she is able to work better with him for it. And I kind of wonder if maybe her having been raised to respect her elders, possibly a little bit better than Peter was, or rather sticking to that possibly better than Peter does, as he and JJ do not get along. It's really funny to see that dynamic again. And Cindy is living with her, I guess, college-aged brother these days, which is nice because it seems that there was many years where for whatever reason she couldn't go see her family. I don't really recall why that was now, but I'm glad that she's back to a place that she, Cindy Moon, seems to really be loving, so that's nice. And of course, like I said, she does the regular Spider-Man thing of trying to balance her work and her superheroing, which gets super tricky, but they always pull it off. And now she's been hired by J. Jonah Jameson. Oh, wow, that's a tongue twister. Don't say those back to back. J. Jonah Jameson to be his bodyguard as his reporters and his company, his new online news company, are looking into local gang activity, and so they've rubbed some people the wrong way. And we also have the reintroduction here of a character who has not been seen since the 80s. I could be very mistaken on that. I could be mixing it up with something else that happened this week. But it's some kind of werewolf cat demon thing, and it looks really cool, so I'm excited to find out more about whatever that is, and how that's going to affect Cindy and her life and everything going forward. I would love to also see, a mild, some kind of romance thing maybe. I wouldn't be against that. I know she's dated kind of not really Peter Parker, Johnny Storm. I'm pretty sure there's a few others. She was not one of the ones in Agents of Atlas who had a fling, I don't think. That was Hulkling, Totally Awesome Hulk, who goes by Brawn, that's his name. Brawn and somebody else in Agents of Atlas hooked up, and it was really cute. But, yeah, I'd love to see some of those characters brought into the series, too. She's now been in a couple of things, so she can extend her circle here. Of course, the Spider-Woman herself, Jessica Drew, and whatever she's going by now, but the Gwen Stacy of Earth 65, I believe, who is Spider-Woman in her world / Ghost Spider / I don't honestly know what her title is these days, but I would love to see Cindy has such a nice network of friends now, and I would love to see them pop up in this series a whole bunch. So while she kind of has some new characters and some new people to interact with who she hasn't interacted with maybe in a long time, like her brother, it's also really nice. It would be really nice to see that too. So this was I would say, next to perfect kickoff to it's as close as perfect as you're probably gonna get ever. This is fantastic. I have no gripes with it. I highly recommend it, and of course there are a plethora of covers to choose from. I got the Jen Bartel Women's History variant cover, which was one of 8 covers that she did for that, and I highly recommend you search them out. But there is something like, 10 different variants from different artists, so check that out. A lot of different Asian artists also, so if you're interested in that, also check that out. Silk #1 by Moringu and Takeshi Miyazawa, really phenomenal stuff. Batman Catwoman #4 by Tom King with art by Clay Mann continues to be just head to toe stunning. I didn't really explain the whole what's going on with this series, so if you picked this up, or if you picked up issue 1 because I talked about it and you didn't understand, I'm sorry, I really didn't do a good job of explaining that last time. Basically, this is being told through 3 different time periods. You get the original time period of, well, I should say the time period of Bruce and Selina's original start to their relationship, when she is still a villain and he is still a hero, and they have that kind of dynamic working against each other. And then you have the second time period, which is Selina and Bruce as heroes together, and Andrea Beaumont, who is of course the Phantasm, has returned to Gotham because her son has been killed by either the Joker or one of his minions, and that shows kind of how Bruce and Selina are tied up in that drama. And the third time period it's being told through is post Bruce's death, where his daughter Helena is Batwoman and his wife Selina has just driven to Florida to murder the Joker in honor of Andrea Beaumont specifically. So we're seeing kind of those 3 stories add up to, I guess it's really the why of she killed the Joker. We're seeing that all kind of trickled in here together. So I'll start with, to explain this a little bit better, I'll start with each time period and go through, because if you read the issue yourself, it doesn't say what's what. You have to figure that out by context clues, which admittedly, in my perspective, are extremely obvious once you catch on to them. Things like the costumes the characters wear, the hairstyles. If people are old and crotchety, okay, Selina's not crotchety when she's old, she's still pretty badass, honestly. Like, admittedly superior badassness. Like, it's crazy. But things like that, the outfits, the different costumes they wear through the years. You just have to look at these context clues. Helena being in it is obviously a massive context clue, because that can only be the third time period, stuff like that. Once you figure out what you're looking at, it's super obvious to read, and I recommend figuring that out and reading it, because it is when you do figure it out and you are kind of like on a roll with picking up what's happening when it's happening, or when it's supposed to be happening, what time period it's happening in. It's like watching a really well-written TV episode. So, starting with the first time period, we have Selina and Bruce at the beginning of their relationship. And up to this point in the series, it's been Selina working with the Joker and denying to Bruce that she's working with the Joker. So she's been lying to him to his face for some amount of time now. And now, this issue, in this time period, they're getting ready to go to a party, and she has to stop him and basically say, Bruce, the Joker has a bomb that he left at the Gotham skating rink. It's going to go off in 20 minutes. And he doesn't even have time to stop and question things, and she knows that. So he just turns and leaves angry and goes and saves the day. And when he comes back, he questions her about it. It doesn't really even question her about it. He just shows up and says, 20 minutes, insinuating you knew how long it was going to be for that bomb to go off. Or actually, I think it was, if I had to guess, it was less than 20 minutes and when it went off, because it seemed he was not, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong with that, but in either case, he says that to expect a response of her explaining how the hell she knew Joker's plan here. And what she actually says is she gets angry in return and says she doesn't owe him any explanation. And so they have this, like, a very kind of brief argument, and he takes off, and she's clearly infuriated with herself because, if you've read any of Tom King's Batman and Catwoman interactions, they've had this spark, this flame, this lava under their skin when they touch, since they were, since they first met on the boat and in the street. It's that whole thing. They are meant to be together, and now she's mad at herself for kind of screwing that up when it was going really well for them. I guess at that point, even though she had been lying to him, we'll have to see how she kind of solves this and makes up to Bruce so that they end up getting back together. because obviously we know they get back together because we see them now in the B timeline, which is what you might call modern Bruce and Selina as Batman, Catwoman, heroing. They are together, obviously, so they obviously get back together. So, in this B timeline, what we might call the modern period, Selina, as we ended the last issue with her and Andrea crashing through a window in a fight, because Andrea knows Selina worked with the Joker, and she wants to take out all the Joker's goons, and it's kind of complicated, because obviously Andrea also knows that Selina is Bruce's new love, and she and Bruce are old loves in a way, so she doesn't really want to kill Selina, but she is now, where we see this issue now, it's Selina wakes up at Andrea's hideout, and Andrea, basically, the Phantasm, wants to trade her life for the Joker's, because Selina and Bruce saved the Joker. They put him in a little hideout to save him from her, the Phantasm, but he's what she wants. Phantasm wants to kill the Joker for the death of her son, which was, one way or another, caused by the Joker, whether it was one of his goons or not. The Joker was the cause of that death, so she wants to kill the Joker, and she's now, to do that, she's gonna trade Selina, because she knows, she's been killing all his goons, and she knows Selina wasn't really a goon. It's really complicated, but she still is trying to get this shit done, so they're having this kind of odd, hostile moment, but at the same time, Selina, it's interesting, we're starting to see the relationship between them grow. It's growing to where we saw it at the final part of the plot, where Selina has spent basically her entire life, since now we have to assume, waiting to get revenge on behalf of Andrea, on behalf of this other woman, who at this point, she really has no loyalty to, besides just wanting to do, what is right, because Bruce, wants her to do what is right, and she's trying to be good now, so we're starting to see that relationship grow, and so Selina, in this hideout, she watches Andrea watch the videos of her son alongside the photos of his dead body, which is like, she's torturing herself to make sure that she does the murder. Like, she's forcing herself to be the way that she is, Andrea, so Selina comes down and she speaks to her about the whole situation, about the Joker and her son's death. We don't really get anything figured out in this part of the plot. It's just the two of them kind of talking, and like I said, the start to that relationship, getting to whatever this is going to be, that it's going to be important for them down the line. Finally, we have the C plot, which is in the future, of course, and Helena as Batwoman, Helena tracking down old friends and former villains and whatnot, of her mother's companions and things, to try and figure out what Selina's true connection with the Joker is/was, because she killed him, and she's trying to track down the reason, if she really had a reason to kill him and everything, what their connection was. The various henchmen that she speaks with basically say that Selina was the one person the Joker got really close to as a friend. So she talks to a few people. Selina herself then shows up to, this is aged Selina now, she shows up to the Penguin's place after Helena, her daughter, is there and interrogates him, and then she leaves. And Selina knows that he gave her whatever information. He's not stupid, he had to. So this is really crazy, Selina she brings her black cat with her everywhere now, and she has it slaughter one of the penguins, actual penguins. It rips its throat out, saying that, and she tells him Gotham belongs to her. Like, that, Selina has not lost her touch in her old age. Good Christ, that was nuts. And clearly, I would also say that she clearly has her fingers in places, dipped in places that she is not yet ready to admit to her daughter, or possibly to the rest of Gotham. She seems to have lots of ears on her, so I'm very curious to see kind of how that goes. And it is 100% worth noting that Helena's style, her whole thing, her whole shtick as Batwoman, is painfully lethal. She has the suit and the tech of her father, Bruce Wayne, Batman, plus the demeanor, his demeanor, I should say, of silent but deadly, resting boss bitch face, and total straightforwardness. And then on the other side, she has her mother's flexibility, cunning, sneakiness, and ability to fit in basically anywhere she needs. And the athleticism, fighting skills, and brains of both. So let's be real for a second here. Helena's Batwoman would be scarier to come across in Gotham than either of her parents at night, even her father. I would say, you know, Damian as Batman would be too, with his, you know, his other side basically being, you know, Ra's al Ghul, heir to the demon kind of stuff. So that's you know, and the other side being Batman. That's pretty crazy too. Helena looks slim, muscular, wiry, tightly wound, but completely in control. Her mannerisms are stealthy, solid, confident, and she leaves me to believe that she has complete control of any situation she appears in. There's a really cool shot of her crouched on a table in front of a couple of, I guess, ex-henchmen. Really, really awesome shot that you can just imagine her flipping a leg out and kicking them in the jaw if they say the wrong thing. So, really loved that. And I totally imagine that Bruce and Selina had their daughter training to fight as soon as she could walk. So this makes sense. This all makes perfect sense to me. It also leaves me wondering how this is going to end between Selina and her daughter. Is Helena going to be able to forgive her mother, or is she going to see her mother as a threat? Is she going to try and turn her in, or otherwise brutally end their relationship? Like, you know, is one of them going to end up having to kill the other? Is it going to go that far? Is Selina going to end up, you know, admitting to her daughter all this stuff and letting her turn her in? You know, I don't see Selina backing down, and I don't see Helena backing down. So, it also makes me wonder, on that note, was Bruce what tied these two together? Is she too much like her father? I don't know what it is. Is she too much like a combination of them, or too much like just her father and her sense of justice? So I guess that's probably what it is. She's too like Bruce, and they're not in love, and their dynamic is mother and daughter. So things are different than it was between Selina and Bruce. And again, this all goes back again to what the hell happens between Selina and Andrea and potentially the Joker that makes Selina spend her entire life basically waiting for Bruce to die so she can go slaughter the Joker for whatever it is that he did to Andrea. It's gotta be more than the death of her son. I'm sticking by that still. This is of course going to be 12 issues like most of Tom King's DC, I guess Black Label series. I'll talk about Strange Adventures in a little bit. Next up, though, I just have a quick note on Black Cat number 4. It was really just a fun issue setting up Felicia to have a new nemesis. It pretty much took place entirely with this character, the Queen Cat, who was a woman who, I guess, died and came back as a different version of herself. I'm not really sure. I didn't really care too much to look into it. But she basically has the exact reverse suit of Felicia, and she hates Felicia because Felicia is a villain, and this Queen Cat wants to be a hero, but Felicia's always the one who people notice, and she's the original cat, you know, character, so, you know, Queen Cat has to be, like, different or something. I don't know, she just hates Felicia because she's the original, and she wants to be the only cat, I guess, figure in New York and wants to be a hero. So she tries to take Felicia out in this issue, and basically just ends up that Felicia has been 3 steps ahead of her the whole time, and makes her look like a fool and says, "Nice to meet you, see you around, you know, see you on the rooftops," or whatever. So it was a really fun setup of this new nemesis that she's gonna have. Once again, Jed McKay writes a fantastic Black Cat, and I am so looking forward to see what the hell it is that he's got going on with Infinite Destinies this summer, fall-ish time. Late summer. We'll go with late summer. That's gonna be a lot of fun, I think. Whatever it is that Black Cat Felicia is doing with Infinity Stones, setting up a whole bunch of stuff, hopefully, for the future, and keeping her, hopefully, as a character with an ongoing series into the future. But yeah, I love Black Cat series, and Jed MacKay writes it fantastically. Is fantastically even a word? Whatever. Oh, next on the agenda, Beta Ray Bill #1. Oh my gosh. Daniel Warren Johnson, of course, is the creator on this. This is not what I expected, but I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I mean that in the best way. This is not what I expected. Daniel Warren Johnson, I have to shout out myself, I guess, for a second. He reposted the Instagram story that I posted about the rule being to listen to metal while you read it. I thought that was pretty funny. But honestly, that I hadn't read it at that point, and that would not have fit the issue past the first couple of pages. So while it's I really like this. It's gonna be 6 issues, and I'm really interested to see what happens here, because where we start here, basically, it's while things are happening in King Black, Thor's on Earth, so Asgard is being protected by Beta Ray Bill, who I guess got his powers back post whatever Donny Cates is doing in Thor right now, which did not line up time-wise with King Black at all, which doesn't make sense because those are both his things, but whatever. Continuity is never good in comics. Fing Fang Foom, which, Lord, is such a racist name, is possessed by, he's the Asian dragon. He's possessed by Null, and I don't know why he's an Asian dragon. I guess he's Shang-Chi's one of his villains. I don't know, whatever. It's part of Marvel's weird semi-racist history. But Fing Fang Foom is possessed by Null, because, Null's doing Null stuff in King of Black. And Beta Ray Bill is not really having that great of a time battling him, but he's holding out pretty well. It'll take some time, but he'll probably win eventually. And then Thor bursts onto the scene, saves the day a whole lot faster, being Thor, and everybody flocks to worship him. Bill is peeved for obvious reasons. He and Sif have been flirting hardcore in a couple of things now, so for a while, and she basically propositions him straight up. They head off to his quarters, or possibly hers, that wasn't really clear. When they get there, they're kissing, which was pretty funny because he drew their faces, their bodies were there, you could see like a buff Beta Ray Bill body, but then their faces were kind of in shadows, because I don't think he could figure out how to draw Sif kissing Beta Ray Bill's teeth. However that would have worked. They get there, and then she actually asks how this is gonna work. And my first thought, I guess maybe, I don't know, I'm a pervert, I don't know, my first thought is, we are about to have the horse sex conversation. Holy shit. Bill, of course, asks for clarification, as I would definitely would have needed clarification. And she says she's asking about him transforming into his humanoid form. Kind of a little bit again, I'm stuck here thinking we're talking about horse sex, or at least Sif trying to avoid horse sex, and would rather have sex with something that's more humanoid in appearance. I guess it continues down the bod. I've never really thought about it that hard until now. And Bill reports back, unfortunately, that he hasn't been able to transform out of his Beta Ray Bill, powered up worthy form since whatever it is that's happening in Thor. I guess Odin comes back and gives him powers. I guess they spoiled all of that ending of Thor. But whatever. I guess we kind of knew that was happening anyway. And Sif gets clearly visually very disappointed. I was still sitting here thinking horse sex is the problem, but Bill took that in a completely different way, and I did not see this coming. He tells her, "It's okay, Lady Sif. I am able to see myself." He basically says he knows this form isn't appealing, and leaves. Holy shit. This is a comic book about Beta Ray Bill feeling depressed over his physical appearance. Holy shit, I did not see that coming. But I love it. Also in this issue, we get some backstory about how Bill was chosen as a child to be an important warrior chosen for his people. although that meant sending him away at a young age with just the AI of his ship to keep him company. I did not take down the name of that, I should have. It's something that I guess is back from his OG days of Beta Ray Bill, and now they have brought it back into continuity, I guess, so that's really exciting. I am just so glad that we're getting a proper exploration of Bill's past and whole character based on this first issue, and I am completely enamored with the concept of his physical appearance being a problem in his life. We all love to joke about the massive, quote, horse face guy. I think I think we in our house call him that horse face motherfucker. Honestly, I think that's what we refer to him as, if we're not just straying Beta Ray Bill. But have we ever considered, any of us fans, the price of that look that he has no control over? If we joke about it, imagine how the 616 feels towards Bill and how it looks to see it in person. Man, I cannot wait to see where this goes. I don't think this exploration of his, internal sadness over this semi-cursed appearance that he has is going to be the whole series. There's obviously going to be more to it. It's going to be an exploration of him as a person, or him as a citizen of Asgard and a citizen of the universe, as a protector, maybe we're going to see the journey between him growing and him encountering Thor and having that fight, and why it is that he became worthy, why he was worthy, already. I'm so thrilled with this. I knew I was gonna like it, but the fact that it's not just the fighting and the heavy metal, it had the heavy metal rock and roll elements to it, of course, in the beginning, but then it brought in the heart, and that was what really stuck with me for Beta Ray Bill #1. And I wish this was ongoing, man. I don't think Daniel Warren Johnson would ever do an ongoing book. He's actually, I think this is one of his first things for Marvel as his own work, not just a cover, so that's pretty cool too. He's done several things at DC, which I do recommend as well, especially Wonder Woman Dead Earth. But that's all I have to say of Beta Ray Bill. We'll talk about Beta Ray Bill as a character a little bit later in the episode when we get to the Love and Thunder news. And then we have X-Men #19, which is Hickman book #1 of the week. Pure excellence. Please read the right pages, it will help make things make sense. This is basically Laura, the former X-23, and the others, Sink and Darwin, I think, making their way through the vault, and finally out the other side, kind of. They were inside, basically, for hundreds of years, to their perspective, and witnessed complicated generations of the children of the vault growing and learning to adapt to the point that literally none of them actually got out of there alive. Technically Sink got out alive, but then they got out too, and they caught him and killed him. Like, these children of the vault, they are not children anymore, and they are gonna be really big problems. One thing I really thought, I did not see coming, but I really enjoyed, is that Laura and Sink started up a romance, and the end of the issue, of course, the three of them all get brought back in the Kekroan birthing chamber thing. They get reborn in their adult forms, and so because they were ancient basically in the vault. And the end has Sink questioning if things are going to be the same now that they're outside of the vault. Kind of like, it made me think kind of like when you hang out with the popular kids from your school on the weekend because your parents are friends, but then they don't talk to you the next day at school. He was wondering if that was going to happen, and as he looks at her when they're standing there naked, straight out of the rebirthing chamber pods, she answers by throwing up her claws in a threat, asking what he's looking at, which sounds bad. It may seem real bad for him and their future, but it's exactly how their relationship started in the last issue when they first go into the vault, and it is as good as an answer as any from Wolverine, and I take that as things are going to be the same as it was, so that's good. I was surprised to like that little romance. Laura is finally been aged up enough. I think Hickman definitely wanted to use this as an opportunity to put his foot down that Laura is not a goddamn teenager anymore. She is a fucking adult. I'm sorry, I'm cussing a lot on this episode. And speaking of Hickman and his creations, although Laura wasn't one, but the Children of the Vault are, I think, horticulture popped up in Curse of the Man-Thing this week. Horticulture was the group of octogenarian and up-ish women who were all sciencey and botanists and whatnot, and they didn't like what the Krakoan X-Men were doing, so they attacked the X-Men, and now we see them in Curse of the Man-Thing doing crazy science stuff there, so that was pretty cool to see. And I wonder if that'll be connected to the X-Men stuff, if that'll be brought up. I don't know. You don't really own your creations at Marvel, so I guess he couldn't really have said that, if anybody works with them, he has to be involved, so we'll see if they get mentioned. They definitely will get mentioned again in the X-Men stuff on Hickman's side, but I wonder if this specific occurrence will ever get mentioned again by Hickman. And then we have Decorum number 7, which is Jonathan Hickman comic book number 2 of the week, which is just more excellence across from just remarkable artwork. The plot is fun. The plot is interesting too. That is granted. But what makes Decorum so special? The mother-loving interiors. So good. Huddleston, I think Mike Huddleston is his name. He does such amazing interiors for Decorum. This is phenomenal. It is, what you have in here is two extremely opposing worlds, portrayed with two extremely opposing art styles. One is lifelike, colored, smooth. The other geometric, linear, blocky, each just like the inhabitants of their worlds. The variation between the two is amazing, and Huddleston transforms one style into the other, molding them briefly together to have the opposing, before having the opposing to have the opposing styles on the page together. Words. And he uses color just as much as figures to tell the story. You'll have panels that are colored extremely differently from the panels around them, just to make a point in the storytelling and the characterization and things like that. It's showing rather than telling in so much of this in a creative, artistic way. I've said it so many times before, it's something that Tom King does a lot, and it's clearly something that Jonathan Hickman does so much, especially even with his X-Men stuff, but especially here in Decorum, is you show to tell a good story, show, do not tell. Especially in comics. It's something that they say a lot in like TV and movies and stuff, but in comics, that is, 100% how to make a good comic, in my mind, is you show people how, you can put in stuff through conversation and dialogue and stuff, but, if you put in the artistic details and whatnot to get this to kind of portray the story on the page with the art instead of the words, it is so satisfying. I can't talk enough about how good this is, and I don't even know if what I'm saying is making it sound good, but it's just like, oh man, it is practically indescribably excellent. There's only one more issue of this, and I'm kind of sad because I'm going to miss seeing this trippy dueling arts of the same guy on the same pages. Just it's wild. It's really wild. And I love, of course, how Hickman's stories, which a lot like Tom King's, tend to be 3/4 of the way build up and last quarter knowledge drop. They build the world, the story, the questions as to what's going on, and then they reveal the whole plan to you in, satisfying increments until you finally see the whole gorgeous picture. And that's definitely what's happening with Decorum here. And I really hope that Hickman has some kind of additional indie project once it's over, because I think this is my first non-superhero Jonathan Hickman thing that I've read, and I'm going to look up some more because it is great. I think I like this more than I like any of his Marvel stuff that I've read, so that's saying a lot, if you know me. And finally, in the comics segment, I want to talk about Strange Adventures number 9. This is number 9 of 12. And of course, it's by Tom King with Mitch Gerads and Doc Shaner on the art. Kind of the similar way that Decorum has the Mike Huddleston doing the two dueling art styles to show the different worlds and the characters within them. Strange Adventures has the two different artists who have extremely different art styles to show the two different, let's say, perspectives of what's going on. You have things that are currently happening, which is Mitch Gerads' point of view, and then you have the flashbacks, which are Doc Shaner's point of view. And the way that, Shaner's art style is so much crisper and Gerads is so much more scratchy and, comparable to Sienkiewicz or something like that. And how the story, the clearer artwork is the more questionable story, but the scratchier artwork is the half of the story that they're searching in to find the truth. And we're kind of seeing the lie played out on the other side in a sense, but it's, kind of being revealed on the first side while it's played out on the other side. It's fantastic. I'm sure every single article in the history of this being written about talks about these art styles and how it makes everything work so perfectly. Where we are at in the series right now, issue 9 of 12, we are still missing some information. Mr. Terrific, who has been one of the driving forces behind all of this, he actually didn't appear in this too much and had no speaking lines, but the only panels that he was in said a lot. It starts with, he starts writing a note to Alana, as she speaks on TV and in a live interview. His note addresses the apparent lies surrounding this whole situation, and that's all we get from Mr. Terrific. And it's intriguing, of course, because King has made great effort to portray Mr. Terrific as the smartest man in the DC universe in this series, which I believe. Between his constantly testing himself and constantly proving that he has more knowledge than anybody else in the room, even when they say that they're the smartest people in the room, he's clearly the one who has his head on right in the situation. If anybody does, it's Mr. Terrific. I fully believe that Mr. Terrific is the one who has all the information and is just waiting for everybody else to kind of admit the truth. So that's really exciting, and of course he's drawn like an absolute hunk by Mitch Gerads. I think he might have a crush on him, I'm not sure. I can't blame him. And then you have some reveals about Adam Strange in the past. Adam Strange is definitely a war criminal. There's no scenario where you bomb an entire city, I guess, with toxic gas, and then kill the citizens who manage to escape half dead as it is, and not be designated a war criminal. Doesn't matter who the city was, you slaughtered them all and left no room for survivors. You, my friend, are a war criminal. And the fact that they tried to defend themselves. It's I get it's a complicated situation, but, you could at least admit that was a pretty bad call. There's nothing wrong with admitting that you did something wrong, especially if you're a superhero. I also think that it's pretty obvious part of the big reveal or reveals will be that are going to wrap up Strange Adventures. Is going to involve the daughter of Adam Strange and his wife, Aaliyah. The daughter is Aaliyah. Everyone has been so incredibly vague about what happened to her, and to an extent it makes sense that, the parents don't want to talk about how their daughter supposedly died. But I'm starting to think, based on how little we have seen and how that's kind of been danced around by certain characters, part of me kind of thinks that maybe Adam Strange handed her over to the Plix, their enemies, or possibly sacrificed her or something. I don't know, but there is definitely something that has still been held back from us by way of information about Aaliyah and her mysterious disappearance, I guess. And I cannot wait to find out what that is. Part of me really thinks that it's going to be one of her parents, more likely at this point Adam, than her mother, having done something horrific to her or on her behalf or something. And at the same time, I kind of hope that's not it, because, God, that would be traumatizing and awful. And that wraps up this week's comic book talk. I had a lot of fun with this week's comic books, and like I always say, or at least I try to always say, this is not everything good that came out in comics. This is just the stuff that I put out in my pull list that I read that I thought was good. There is so much more in comics that's not on my pull list that I don't even read. I know there's all this good stuff that I don't read. It's not my kind of stuff. That's why I don't read it. And for you, if you're trying to find, if none of the stuff that I'm talking about sounds like it's good, your kind of stuff, there still could be your kind of stuff in comics. If you go to any local comic shop, email them, call them, show up to them if you can. They will be more than happy to help you find something current, or even a trade paperback or something, that you will like based on whatever interests you can tell them about yourself. So there's always more in comics than what I talk about, and I talk about a lot, so I feel like that says pretty much a lot. And next up, we're going to go into the news and theories segments, but we do have one quick note on Superman and Lois first. Which is basically to say that it's not coming back. Well, it will be coming back eventually, but it's not going to have a new episode until May 18th, 2021, which is, 2 months away? I don't know, it's a month away. Okay, it's a month and a half away. We're already in April now. Wow, it's still blowing my mind. And that will be episode 6, scheduled for 8 p.m. Central Time. So figure that out based on where you are. And that seems to be because they're making room for the final season of Supergirl before they get back to Superman and Lois. I guess the 6th season of Supergirl is the last season, and now they've pulled Superman and Lois from the Tuesday nights and put Supergirl in. I did watch Supergirl for a long time when it was on its original network. I don't think I did watch a little bit of the CW stuff, I guess, because I did see... Well, was Superman brought in on the CW stuff? I don't honestly remember if it was before or after they moved to the CW. But that's, I think part of why they're doing this is out of respect for Supergirl's character having come first in this universe. It was her show that they introduced this Superman on, so I feel like maybe they're trying to do her finale, they're trying to focus on her finale, whether or not that's going to finish between now and May, I have no idea how many episodes it's going to be. But I think they're just trying to do her right before they bring in the next, I guess, wave of her cousin stuff, who in their own lineup came after her. So, that's my thought on it, of why they are going ahead and waiting a month and a half. And as I mentioned last week, I did start watching Black Lightning. I so recommend it if you haven't. It's on Netflix. It's really phenomenal. It touches on a lot of the same issues that Superman and Lois does, with the superhero families trying to balance various things going on in their life, and where Superman and Lois kind of touches on the, let's say, white liberal politics. Black Lightning focuses on a lot of the harsher realities of politics in the South. So it's the creator of Superman and Lois had apparently said some things about their show being the only superhero family show. So I just wanted to do Black Lightning justice by giving it as much room in my head as Superman and Lois. So, and I do think it is as good, definitely as good, if not slightly better than Superman and Lois. It's really, I think it's really excellent. And I think you will too if you watch it. If you like the things that I talk about on here, you'll probably like that too. And so we'll go ahead and move along into our news and, rumors and things segment. So first up, we have official casting news from Thor, Love and Thunder, and that is that Russell Crowe has been cast in a role. We don't know what it is yet. And my thought on this, after looking at a picture of him these days, it's gotta be Beta Ray Bill, right? I know we went on this all about Christian Bale and he ended up being Gore the God Butcher, but Russell Crowe appears to have gained some weight in his old age, which, good for him for being a straight white man in Hollywood that he's allowed to do that. But if they let him use his accent, he would be a fantastic, fat, angry, drunk Beta Ray Bill. I guess he's technically from New Zealand, but he has an Aussie accent from living there, I guess, most of his life. Either way, it would totally work. Let him use his regular accent. And Taika Waititi is, of course, a native Kiwi, so it makes sense that he would cast someone else who is also a Kiwi, even a white Kiwi. So I would give so much to be a fly on that wall, genuinely, because I know Taika Waititi, how he is apparently with his life and everything, and Russell Crowe, we've all heard how he is, the kind of guy that he is, maybe kind of angry and loud, so I'd be really curious how their interactions would be. Plus, if they do that, they could have Thor guide a fat drunk Bill back to being fit and sober or something, because that's exactly what Thor was in Endgame, right? So it would be the perfect full circle. And it would work because we know that this isn't going to be an origin story. We already saw Beta Ray Bill's head sculpture or something on some structure on Sakaar, the planet of the Grandmaster from Ragnarok. Grandmaster, by the way, is the Collector's brother. Some people are theorize that sculpture was there to mark him as the former champion of Sakaar, which, if that's a thing, we could potentially see that in Love and Thunder, which I guess would be pretty cool. And then Bill's story, of course, is that he is a Corbinite warrior who lifted Thor's hammer, proving himself worthy, and then fought Thor in battle with it. And Odin was so impressed by Bill that he had a weapon made of his own, Stormbreaker. We have already seen this axe/hammer in Infinity War, so it's possible they might go with a different weapon in the MCU, like Yarnborn. I don't think that one's shown up yet, so maybe him not having the hammer or not having Stormbreaker is why he's so depressed. But then again, Stormbreaker was that ancient mold, so it wouldn't really make sense. Unless they're saying Beta Ray Bill is ancient, which again is possible. They have complete, creative control over what they change for his character, so we could be all completely wrong about this. It could be not Beta Ray Bill at all. It may not be Beta Ray Bill. I'm just going to talk about Beta Ray Bill anyway. They are already filming, yes, but I had a feeling that they would be waiting as long as possible to cast the absolute right choice as Beta Ray Bill. He's one of the most nervously anticipated appearances from Thor's 616 mythology in the MCU, and I say nervous because his look is so... Like I said when I was talking about his comic earlier, we call it horse face. He's got a horse head, but the front of it is more like a horse skull. It's hard to imagine seeing something like that on screen. You'll have to look him up if you don't know what I'm talking about, because he is something else. He's like a horse skull, but not quite. His horse head that turns into a horse skull, but it's all just one piece. It's very hard to imagine that happening on screen, so I figure that he would probably be the last important player of the cast to be cast. So otherwise, in Love and Thunder, we know we already have Natalie Portman playing Jane Foster again. We got those leaked pictures a few weeks ago, how she's becoming buff to become Thor like in the comics, and I'm so excited. We also know that Christian Bale, like I said, has been cast as Gore the God Butcher, who in the comics is loosely tied in with Thor becoming unworthy. So that might be part of why he's here, if he becomes unworthy and Jane picks up the hammer, or possibly maybe Jane just takes it from him. That would be cool too. I would be fine with that. Either way, exciting to think about. If you have some other theories about who Russell Crowe might be playing, let me know, because there's a whole world of Asgardian characters that he could play. So it could be any number of things, and I'm just kind of stuck on Beta Ray Bill because I want him in this so goddamn bad. I don't know if this is going to be the last Thor movie. We really don't know. We can assume it is, because Taika Waititi has some Star Wars stuff he's going to be moving on to next, I think. But either way, I'm so pumped for finding out whatever this is going to be. And I just like Beta Ray Bill, so there we go. We have the Flash TV show casting news. I have to start this off by saying I don't actually watch this show anymore, but I think it's interesting when I saw this pop up on Twitter. I think it's very interesting that they're continuing this. They cast Barry and Iris's future son, Bart Allen, who is, I guess, Impulse, or he will be Impulse. The actor is Jordan Fisher. Their take on Iris is black in this show, so it makes sense that their son is mixed. I'm really pleased that they continued forward with that. Their daughter was mixed as well. Her name was Nora, who we already saw in the previous in a previous season, I guess. Not the, I don't know when she was there, if she's still there, I'm not really sure. I actually stopped watching around the time that she was introduced, but I think I liked her character. I don't really remember, honestly. There was a lot of mystery surrounding her still, where, like, we knew who she was, but they didn't, that kind of thing. So I'm glad to see that they're still going strong into the Bart plot line. I have no idea what's been going on in that show, so I just thought it was interesting about this news. Otherwise, we have some Eternals, theories, I guess. There are rumors that Star Fox and Pip are going to be appearing in the Eternals, which Pip is not so interesting, but Star Fox, are we sure we want to do that, Marvel? In the comics, his powers are to influence people, basically, and he has a tendency to do that to women, to make them want to sleep with him, which is rape. So again, Marvel, is this really a good idea? He is Thanos' brother, yes, so it makes sense to that extent, I suppose, but I'm not sure that this is gonna work. If he's really gonna be in it. They could be massively overhauling his character to make it work, and that would be, one way to definitely make it work. So I'm just gonna assume they're doing that. They're gonna massively overhaul Star Fox to make him not... Did I say Star Fox? Star Fox to make him not a rapist. I don't know what I said there. Yeah, so hopefully that won't be terrible. Pip the Troll is a character from, some decades ago, if I recall. I think he was the one that Thanos stole some of the Infinity Stones, or at least one of the Infinity Stones from. And I think he was on a few teams at a few points in time. I want to say he was on Alpha Flight. No, that was a different troll guy. But he's a friend of Star Fox's, I guess. So whatever, he's gonna be in it too. That's fine. He's a funny little character who appears in various things through time. Whatever. Moving on, we have some kind of sad updates on the DCEU lineup. There's been a lot of talk recently from AT&T, oh, I hate that, about the DCEU movies and TV shows they're planning going forward. And as of yesterday, New Gods, which was the Ava DuVernay Tom King project, and The Trench, which was the James Wan Aquaman spin-off project, are officially not happening. The DC execs say that the projects will remain in their skillful hands if they were to move forward in the future. Which makes me think a little bit like the saying that if they were to move forward, I don't know, it just kind of all sounds like it was a split of interests, maybe? Like Ava and Tom wanted to go in one direction and DC wanted them to kind of tweak what they had to fit with what we just saw, possibly, or what people are expecting based on what we just saw in the Snyder Cut. And they potentially said, well, no, we're doing our project, not Zack Snyder's project. And so that's my theory on why this is all happening. Ava DuVernay, of course, remains in the DC fold and is currently working on the DC series Naomi, which is kind of, when that was announced, that was kind of when we all realized, okay, New Gods isn't happening. This is more, Ava's putting out more and more stuff and absolutely no updates for New Gods, so not surprising, but just real sad that got canceled. And Tom King is, of course, still writing for DC. DuVernay did write on Twitter with a photo of herself and Tom King together. Tom, I loved writing New Gods with you. I'm upset that the saga of Barda, Scott, Granny, Highfather, and the Furies ends this way. Diving into Kirby's fourth world was the adventure of a lifetime that can't be taken away. Thank you for your friendship, and remember, #Darkseid is. Because, of course, Tom King was kind of the one to key Darkseid is as basically the statement of he's always, kind of like how death is always going to get you, Darkseid is always going to, it's basically the same thing. So that's so sad. A quote from the article, actually, before I go to that, I want to say, the fact that Ava wrote specifically the saga of Barda, Scott, Granny, Highfather, and the Furies makes me think that this was gonna be a movie about Big Barda and her journey from becoming a female Fury to a person living probably on Earth with Scott. And that shit makes me so mad. We're not getting that now. Oh my god, Barda is one of those characters that I like. I don't talk about her that much because she's not really honestly been relevant in anything except for this, which is now not happening. But she is like probably one of the characters who I relate to the most out of any comic book character, for a lot of reasons. But I am just completely heartbroken and crushed that this has been canceled, especially now that we have this vague knowledge that this was probably going to be a project about Barda. And the fact that it was Barda, Scott, and then Granny, Highfather, and the Furies. This wasn't going to be a New Gods movie. This was going to be a movie about Barda and Scott, and the two sides, Granny and Highfather, pulling on them from different directions. And then the Furies, who are stuck in between. Like, shit, dog. We could have had it all. We could have had it all, man. The article does quote, it says, New Gods, which would have been a sprawling tale, was complicated by the fact that its villain, Darkseid, just appeared as a major foil in Zack Snyder's Justice League, and there was a desire to have space between the latter and any new appearances. So yeah, basically I was probably right with my theory that they split because they probably wanted them to go in the Justice League direction, and these two writers were probably saying, hell no, as they should. The Trench, meanwhile, was to have been a horror-tinged project spinning out of Aquaman and focused on the group of the deadly amphibious creatures, I'm quoting an article again here, seen in the $1 billion grossing 2018 film. Noah Gardner and Aidan Fitzgerald had written the script, which Wan was developing as a producer with collaborator Peter Safran, who I'm sorry, I don't know who that is. Wan, too, remains in the DC fold and is prepping for Aquaman 2, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully recasting Mera, although I doubt they're actually going to do that. I'm kind of mad that these both got canceled. Obviously more New Gods than The Trench. The Trench would have been cool. James Wan's an excellent horror director, so we really got screwed for not getting that, even though it's not needed. Of course it's not needed. Nothing is needed. You know how cool it would have been to have a James Wan superhero horror movie, though? That would have been awesome! And how cool it would have been to have Ava DuVernay and Tom King, who has proven himself at being able to write these characters, writing a movie about Big Barda and Scott Free trying to, free themselves from the pull of Highfather and Granny Goodness, like, from the two different sides. You have the good light and the dark, but they didn't want to be part of either of that. They wanted to just be them, We could have had it all. But, I'm mad that this shit got canceled, and Peacemaker is getting a show on HBO. Like, how is that? If they're saying that this basically got canceled because it's not relevant, they don't have room for it, how the hell are you going to say Peacemaker is relevant and they have room for it? Really? You literally made that show as a joke, and then it caught on, and so you had to be like, okay, yeah, we're actually going to make it now. Like, that's so lame. There was a Bad Batch trailer that was released finally this week for the Bad Batch on Disney+. Was a really, really fun trailer. I highly recommend watching that if you're interested in the show or you enjoyed Clone Wars at all. And that will, of course, be premiering, I think I had said it wrong in the past, I'm not really sure, but that will be premiering on May the 4th, Star Wars Day. It is, of course, a spin-off from the Clone Wars, following 5 clones who are special and different for various reasons. They're not like the others. It makes them unique and gives them special and useful skill sets. The Bad Batch premiered in the final season of the Clone Wars and became immediate fan favorites with I believe a self-titled episode in the final season. They announced the show at the Disney Investors Day last fall, and it was met with enormous excitement, as was this trailer earlier this week. The name of the Bad Batch members are Hunter, Echo, Tick, Wrecker, and Crosshair. We're also going to have Ming-Na Wen showing up as Fennec Shand, younger than we saw her in Mandalorian, also animated. So this will be taking place long before, we obviously know this will be taking place long before Mandalorian, during the end fallout, basically, of the end of the Clone Wars. And it also says, apparently, this is going to be a 70-minute premiere episode, so 1 hour and 10 minutes. That's pretty crazy. They have not done that with anything on Disney Plus yet. I don't know if they did that with Mando, I don't recall. But it's interesting because this is a spin-off of the Clone Wars that they seem to be clearly making for older folk now. As it is on Disney Plus, it's not necessarily targeted towards any age market. being on a kids TV channel would, be different, but this is just Disney Plus, and they put things for all ages on here. So, I'm curious if the content of this is going to be a lot heavier. Although, there is that, it seems there's some rando kid in the trailer who is, I suppose, following them around and being their little sidekick. He looks like an elf or something. I missed what he is when I was watching the trailer. I was paying attention to the actual team, but this is really exciting. I think they had, I'm actually not sure, did they do Black Series figures at the Bad Batch? I think they were going to. I'm not sure if they actually got out ever. I don't recall. But I really enjoyed that myself, as everyone else did. So this will be really fun. Another Disney Plus series, and the first Disney Plus series, featuring Star Wars characters since Mando. So that's really exciting as well. This week, actually yesterday, had a second Suicide Squad trailer, which I think was put out for a little bit of clarification's sake. My first reaction when watching the trailer without figuring out who anybody was in it, the initial trailer, was that the character who I believe is called Ratter was someone who they were saving, because the way the clips were shot together made it look like they were rescuing her. This definitely solves that problem. She's just one of the team members, so we don't know what it is the plot necessarily is that they're trying to do. This just got us a touch more look at the various characters, solid shots of each team member, more clearly showing each member as, whoever they are. A little bit more John Cena as Peacemaker, which, was hilarious, but I still don't think the show is any point. A couple of new shots, a couple repeated shots, and really just left me more sure than ever that most of these folks are going to eat it. Some of them probably within the first 15 to 20 minutes of the movie. As soon as they get probably out of, Belle Reve or whatever it is that they're stuck in these days, I'm sure it's immediate. Someone's gonna die as soon as they make it out. So that it'll be fun. I have no doubt this will be a fun movie. Like I've said a couple of times before, James Gunn does horror and gore very well because he doesn't go too far. He handles all of that stuff to make it, I don't want to say tasteful, but yeah, it is. That's the closest word I can think of, is tasteful. That will be, of course, one of those things that will be I believe, in theaters and on HBO, so I will definitely be watching that from home when that premieres. I forgot to put it in here, in my notes here, but I wanted to talk a little bit for just a second about Godzilla vs. Kong. Fun as shit. Don't pay attention to the people plot, because when has that ever mattered in a monster fight movie? I don't want to spoil it for people, because this was so fun. Maybe it's already been spoiled on the internet, I don't know, but if you want to know my thought about who won in the whole sense of Godzilla versus Kong, if you're going to talk about that, Godzilla is clearly the king of the monsters. If you watch this movie and you still think that Kong could take Godzilla in a fight without any assistance, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Godzilla, he made it pretty clear that he is the one who can not be stopped. Like that, his blue flame breath or whatever is his fire, like that shit was destroying everything. Also, on that note, I saw some funny memes about how the coroners of the various cities of the world are going to be rejoicing because, there's going to be, there had to have been at least 1 million people killed in this. At least 1 million people. You have these two monsters destroying downtown Hong Kong. There's at least 1 million casualties. There's no way. They got some amount of evacuation, but those skyscrapers and massively crowded streets. Like, you saw people there. So they clearly didn't get it all evacuated. But anyway, I love that movie. I'm glad Godzilla is on top of things. I still think I like Kong. Obviously, he's fine. He's whatever. He's a giant monkey. But Godzilla clearly is the winner of everything here. I mentioned at the start of this episode that I would be mentioning Rihanna a little bit. And here's that. So Rihanna was photographed out and about, I guess, holding a Marvel encyclopedia, causing most people who saw it to wonder who her favorite Marvel character is, who her favorite X-Men is, etc. But a few people on Twitter to wonder if she's doing research for a role. There's literally no reason to think that's what it is. It's highly unlikely, but regardless, it's fun to ask yourself. So we kind of talked about this last night, and my husband came up with Nova, the female herald of Galactus, real name Frankie Ray. I did some research on her character as we were talking about her, because the only time that I've actually read her in something was in the Herald's miniseries from a while back, and she's pretty awesome if I recall. And as I did some research, she is pretty awesome. She was a Human Torch turned Herald of Galactus, friend of Norrin Radd's Silver Surfer, and defender of the Earth. At one point, she died, or was killed, I guess, trying to stop Galactus, his then Herald, who followed her in her footsteps, Morg, and she returned in 2010's Heralds, which is a really fun series. It's only like 5 issues, where Emma Frost, Hellcat, Monica Rambeau, She-Hulk, and Valkyrie kind of assist figuring out who she is and kind of put her 2 pieces of her soul back together so that she is like a whole again. She's had really only minor appearances since then, and minor appearances for the past while, really, but she is back. She is very much alive, and she's exactly the kind of old school off-kilter character that I could see Marvel or potentially James Gunn or somebody casting a a performer like Rihanna to a role like her. Rihanna's been in some good things. I remember there was some stuff that she was in, whatever that horrible movie was that was based off the French graphic novel, not Snowpiercer, the science fiction one. It had the 2 names was the title, I think. But it was Cara Delevingne and that dude whose name I can't remember, but they had no chemistry in the movie whatsoever. It was so bad, and they phoned it in so hard. But remember, Rihanna was in that, and she actually blew it out of the water. She was the best part of that movie. So I do think Rihanna can act, and I feel like Marvel, if they were considering her for something, they would not be doing that without good reason. I haven't had any major disappointments as far as casting for the MCU yet, so if that was, of course, like I said, there's literally no reason for me to think that she's actually going to be cast in something. It's 100%, it's like 99.9% likely that she just picked that up because she's a fan of the comic characters or the MCU or something. Like, it's just fun to spitball about this kind of stuff, And finally, I wanted to make a quick note about my website. Later on today, like Friday the 2nd as it is, I will hopefully be uploading the missing portions of my podcast notes for all my previous podcast episodes. My notes are the notes I take during the week to work off of when I record each podcast, so I imagine they might be useful to someone who is hearing impaired or generally enjoys reading more than listening, to just scan through those notes that I make myself, because that more or less has all the information, everything that I say on this anyway. I just talk based off of what I put in the notes. So I kind of replaced my weekly reviews and comic book discussions with this podcast as well. So I wanted to make sure that if there was anyone who did go to my site for reading, still has something to look at, because I do spend so much more time on this than doing reviews. It just is timely. And all of that. So that wraps up today's episode. I will be back again on Monday. Let's see, Monday will be the 5th, and that on Monday I will be talking about today's Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 3. I saw a couple of minor spoilers this morning going through Twitter, as I tend to accidentally see. And it looks like it's going to be a pretty cool episode. I'm really excited to watch it tonight, and absorb it through the weekend, and then discuss it for you on Monday. So if you are interested in hearing about that, what I have to say about that, that will be on Monday, the 5th. And also on Monday, I'll be talking about next week's comic book poll list, which will be the things that I will be picking up from my comic books from my comic book store that will be coming out next week. So that will also definitely stop by once that episode is out on the 5th to hear all about it. Meanwhile, I believe for those of us who celebrate, or those of you who celebrate, Sunday is Easter, so have a nice Easter Sunday if you do that, or if you and your family do any kind of egg hunts or candy, downing of any kind. Have some fun with that. Enjoy your time safely and humanely. And otherwise, I will be back on Monday the 5th for episode 12A, and I look forward to discussing things for you then. And have a sweaty week. My cat's in my lap. I think I gotta go give her some food, so she's rushing me off. Have a sweaty week, folks.